Hi Year 6 and welcome to Thursday's science lesson. So in science we've been learning all about evolution and inheritance and natural selection. And so today we're going to look at some animals specifically and how they are adapted to their environment. Remember, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution through natural selection was that the animals best adapted to an environment would be the ones that survived there. So different adaptations are really important for survival. Let's start with a little thinking task. Look at these different pictures and note down for me, pause the video and note down any animals that you can think of that might live in these different places. Okay, so we've got a kind of a desert environment, a rainforest type environment and an Arctic environment. Kind of animals we might have thought about, maybe snakes and lizards. Here, maybe you can remember from your Year 5 rainforest topic some of the animals that lived in a rainforest. Again, snakes, like monkeys maybe, frogs, and an Arctic environment, or that could be the Antarctic, it could be the Arctic. We're thinking of polar regions, animals like polar bears or penguins perhaps. So we're going to take a closer look now into how animals can adapt to their habitats. So, different animals live in a lot of different habitats. The word habitat meaning the place where they live, the environment they live. Obviously, all of these different environments have different temperatures and different conditions that they need to survive in. So they need to adapt to best suit their environment to give them the best opportunity to survive. Now, adapt means to change, and animals have to adapt in two ways: physical adaptations and behavioural adaptations. What do we think the difference might be? So, physical adaptations are obviously the way that you look, your physical body. So things about their physical body that they are born with that help them to survive in their environment. Whereas behaviour are going to be things like behaviours that they do, things they actually do in response to their environment. So let's take a look at an example. This is the emperor penguin. It's the largest of all the penguin species. They are the only animals that can breed in Antarctica, so the only ones that are able to have babies in Antarctica, and they mainly eat fish. Let's have a look at its physical adaptations. So it's living in Antarctica. It's going to be really cold. So it has got nasal chambers which recover the lost heat. So in its nose, it can recover heat through its nasal chambers. Its coat is made up of special feathers, and they are both windproof and waterproof. It has got small extremities, so extremities being our extremities are like our fingers and our toes. And if our body has to go and heat large extremities, big hands and feet, then we can't keep the warmth in our core. So we want to keep our core body warmer, so we want to avoid having to warm up lots and lots of different long fingers and toes. So they've got little feet. On their feet, they've got powerful claws. Now that is to help them on the ice and the snow. They've got a layer of blubber under their feathers, so a kind of fat layer, which keeps them warm. Their closely aligned veins and arteries recycle body heat. So their veins and arteries are very close together, and it has a mechanism where it can recycle the body heat to keep it warm, keep the heat going through the body. And it's got a large size and a simple shape, which links to the small extremities. It's got a nice simple shape. It's not having to go and heat lots of long arms and legs. So those are physical adaptations. This is the way the penguin is born, and the reasons why different parts of its body are the way it is in order to adapt in its cold environment. Behavioural adaptations of the penguin. So they are not territorial. Now, animals who are territorial don't let other animals into their space. They think it's their space and they don't want other animals there. Penguins aren't territorial, so they let all the other penguins into their space, and you might have seen penguins huddling. If you look on the website after the lesson, there's a little clip from a Planet Earth show of penguins huddling, so you can see exactly what that looks like in the wild. Now, they huddle together, just like in this picture, to conserve their energy. So basically, they're not doing a lot, they're just standing there, so they're not wasting energy, and then they keep each other warm, and they make a big like circle and they all huddle in together, and they take it in turns to stand on the outside, because obviously the ones on the outside will be the coldest. So they have these huddles and they take it in turns, so the ones in the middle are warmer, and they swap around so that everybody can have a little bit of warmth, and they're conserving their energy. So that's a behavioural adaptation, because it's something they do to help them survive. Something else that they do to help them survive is they breed during the winter. So they make their babies in the winter so that when summer comes, the baby chicks are large enough when the food is abundant. Okay, so you wouldn't want hungry chicks in the winter because there isn't enough food. So that word abundant, if food is abundant, it means there's lots of it available. In the winter, there's less food available, so you don't want hungry growing chicks around. Now the male, so the man penguin, incubates the egg, so keeps it warm, looks after it. If you've ever seen penguins looking after their eggs, they kind of pop them on their feet under like this layer here where this baby penguin is. That's where they keep the eggs, to keep them warm. And so the man stays there, and the lady, the mother penguin, goes into the sea that says for feed, I should say for food. And the male sleeps for 20 to 24 hours a day. So he's there and he's incubating the egg, but he sleeps most of the day so that he's not wasting up his energy moving about. So that's another behavioural adaptation. Let's look at a different animal now. So this is an animal that lives in Australia. So it's a very, very different climate, a desert and scrubland climate. You can see that quite clearly he is camouflaged to that environment. You have to look quite closely to actually make out where this little lizard ends and where he begins. This guy is called the thorny devil, or sometimes known as a mountain devil. He's only small, about 8 inches in length. He's a little lizard. They can live 6 to 20 years. And as I said, they live in the desert in Australia. Let's have a look at his adaptations. So the physical adaptations of the thorny devil. So it's got a false head. So a lump on its shoulder that acts as a false head when its head is down. So that can serve to protect its real head. It's got special teeth that lock into one another to create a shearing tool. So they lock in together to cut. So that will help with some of the food that it eats. It's got spikes on its back to protect it from predators. It makes it harder for it to be eaten because it's all spiky. It's not going to be a very nice thing to eat. So it puts off predators, the animals that are coming to eat it. It's camouflage, as we said before, and you can see this picture shows really clearly that the colours of its skin are really cleverly blended into the desert environment. And then, this is super clever, it absorbs water through its feet. And that's a physical adaptation because it's a feature they're born with. And it means that if they're going, there's obviously not a lot of water in the desert. And so it means that if there's a little puddle of water, it doesn't have to try and drink from it. It can just walk over it and take the water up through its feet. On the website, there is a little YouTube clip of the thorny devil, and you can see it doing that. You can see these in action. Now, let's have a look at its behavioural adaptations. So these are the things, remember, that it does to survive. The other things were features, physical features it's born with to survive. So when it's threatened, it doesn't move. So if a predator is coming, it stands completely still to avoid being spotted. Now remember, it's got really good camouflage. So if it wasn't moving, it would be quite easy to spot. It would be quite difficult to spot. Now when it finds an ant trail, so it eats ants, and it sees the ants are going to come, it stays completely still again, nice and camouflaged, and then when the ants arrive, it goes and eats them. It has an irregular and unique walking pattern. So it stops and starts and it moves side to side, and it would confuse predators who are trying to follow it. If you have a look at that video that I mentioned, you'll see how it walks. They are really, really fascinating, really strange creatures. And then lastly, if it becomes too hot, so obviously heat in the desert is a kind of extreme condition to survive from. If it gets too hot, they dig under the sand. So they another typo there. So they burrow under the sand to keep themselves cool. So they're able to burrow underneath. All right, that's the last behavioural adaptation. So you have seen the penguin and the thorny devil. You've seen their physical and their behavioural adaptations. Your job now is to go and research an animal that has adapted to an extreme environment. So you could look at the deserts, you could look at the polar regions, the rainforest, etc. Then you're going to draw your animal, and you can just draw that freehand, or you can copy a picture, or you could print a picture of your animal to put in the middle of your page. And then you're going to label up its physical adaptations, just like in the two examples I've shown you. And then underneath, you're going to cover the behavioural adaptations with bullet points underneath. So it's going to look very much like this. Now, if you haven't got the facilities to research anymore, or you don't fancy that, you can do your piece on the emperor penguin or on the thorny devil using the information that you've learned in this lesson. Otherwise, go and find your own animal that you are interested in. So you can fill your page. It needs a big picture. It needs to label all the parts of the body that are adapted to the environment. And then underneath, it needs to detail the behavioural adaptations, the things that it does to survive. Okay. So look forward to seeing what you get up to. Thanks for joining the lesson. Have fun with it.